What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel. Welcome back to our video. Today, I am going to be ranking all of the current NASCAR Cup Series tracks that are currently on the NASCAR schedule, whether Corona has affected it or not. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. And keep this in mind, this is my honest opinion. So we're going to go from number 25, as there are 25 racetracks that have been on the schedule from 2019 to 2020, to the number one spot. 1 is the best, 25 is the worst. Let's go ahead and get into this video. So, to start off, in the number 25 spot, we are going to be ranking Kentucky International Speedway. Kentucky is the worst NASCAR track, in my personal opinion. I think the racetrack has been terrible, even since the beginning of the Cup Series. Now, I've looked back at some of those Xfinity Series races, including 2003, and the finish there was outstanding. And there were definitely some good races in the Xfinity Series at the track. But ever since this track came to the Cup Series, it has been terrible. On top of that, when they turned this track into a one-groove racetrack, it just made this the most unbearable race to watch in the season. I will give Kentucky the benefit of the doubt. The last 2 years, the finishes, the 2019-2020 finishes, have been superb. But really, the last 2 laps don't make a race really awesome. And people will say, well, that makes the race awesome. But the last 2 years of this track have only been saved by the finish, but the race have been really at this track horrible. That is why this is the worst NASCAR Cup Series track, in my opinion. Up next, in the number 24 spot, we have another track that I'm not a big fan of, another 1.5 mile track to be exact. We have Texas Motor Speedway. Texas Motor Speedway used to be, honestly, a really, really awesome track back in the day when it really began. From about 1997, 2016, actually, we had a lot of good races during that time. You look back at 2005, when there was some pretty good finishes there, where Carl Edwards basically passed Mark Martin, I think, late in that race. In 2004, side-by-side photo finish between Casey Kane, the rookie, and L.A. Sadler. 2007, a great battle between Jeff Burton and Matt Kenseth. Those are some iconic finishes, and you can't forget in 2014 the fight between Jeff Gordon and Brad Keselowski. But the last couple years of this track have been horrendous. They turned this track into a single-car track because they decided to widen the grooves in turns 1 and turn 3, which basically made it very hard to pass, and like I said, made it a single-groove track. You can barely pass at Texas. I will say the race this year in 2020 was a little bit better, but it's not saved the last couple years of Texas Motor Speedway, and I think the track is now absolutely garbage. It is a terrible track. At least there's only going to be one points-paying race next year, even though Texas is going to get the All-Star race, which hopefully they'll bring all the extra stuff for that race. But honestly, Texas Motor Speedway is just generally an awful track, and I just cannot stand Texas Motor Speedway. Up next in the number 23 spot, we have the Brickyard track, Indianapolis. Indianapolis Motor Speedway has never really had anything really iconic happen. Yes, of course, you have Jeff Gordon, who's won there 5 times. Jimmy Johnson's won there 4 times. And you have Kevin Harvick, who has 3 victories and back-to-back wins in the Brickyard 400. But ever since it began, even in the heydays in NASCAR, when NASCAR was really, really at its peak, and it was great racing at the time, even years 2005 and 2006 when racing was good at that time, the racing generally has been really, really, really bad. It's not been that good. It's usually been single groove racing. Tires really don't matter. You can get up to the front real quick and never really fall back. Tire fall off is never a thing in Indianapolis. And on top of that, this racetrack's prestige kind of went off the circuit in 2008 when it had all those tire blowouts. And you kind of saw a little glimpse of that in 2020. Except fans were not there this year. And I mean, there were definitely some good races, but when they made it like a complete circle, not a circuit around the track, the racing generally became really bad, and I think Indianapolis is just an awful track, and it's just, the racing there is unbearable, and I honestly would rather go to IRP or the Indianapolis Road Course, but NASCAR is not going to go there because it is Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I still think it is a crown jewel event. You can't really reduce length of the races, but honestly, Indianapolis Motor Speedway is just an awful track. Up next, in number 22, we have Michigan International Speedway. Michigan International Speedway used to, back in the day, probably before they repaved the track from about 2006, 2011, and even before that, there were some really excellent races at the track. We got to see multiple grooves on the racetrack and multiple lanes where you could pass. Similar to what Auto Club was back in the day. You got to see multiple lanes. But then in 2012, they decided to repave the track because the track surface was pretty old at the time. And generally since then, even in 2012, when a car tomorrow was not that bad, Arrow wasn't as independent as a Gen 6 car, the racing has been awful. I will give the last race here have been okay because the 550 horsepower package has helped Michigan a little bit. But in my honest opinion, I think Michigan International Speedway is just an awful track. It's a single groove racetrack. You can't really pass. You get these big drafting runs. The truck series, I will give props to. That series does put on a good show at the track. But Michigan International Speedway is just an awful track, and I really hope that they maybe cut one of the Michigan races, because honestly, Michigan International Speedway is pretty awful, and it's not a great track. Up next, in the number 21 spot, we have Pocono International Speedway. Pocono International Speedway, to be quite honest with you, I've not ever really been a big fan of Pocono International Speedway. I am glad that they did move Pocono to a doubleheader this year. I thought that made Pocono go a little bit up. Pocono would have been a little bit lower this year if we kept the traditional lengths, but honestly, it's moved up a little bit higher than I would have had it this year. Because Pocono International Speedway does have some good moments, but honestly, I just think Pocono is kind of a boring track. I used to call this Pocono, because the racing in this track has generally not been fantastic. I'm not a major fan of this track. I am glad that, like I said, they did move it to a doubleheader race, and I'm glad that Pocono is going to be remaining where it stands. Now, if they could fix Pocono International Speedway and maybe make it a road course, that would be exciting, and I think that would be really cool if maybe have like one of the races at the Pocono road course and maybe have the regular Pocono track for one of them. I think that would make Pocono a lot more of an exciting racetrack. Up next, in the number 20 spot, we have Dover International Speedway. This is probably going to be the first controversial one here in this episode. Dover International Speedway used to be an awesome track a long time ago. Back in even the 2000s and the mid-2000s, the racing at Dover in the 90s and 80s was usually pretty good at the concrete mile track, the Monster Mile. But over the last couple of years, the racing has gone downhill. Honestly, I think you can thank the Gen 6 car. I will say the 2016 finish with Matt Kenseth and Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott, that was an excellent finish there. And there's been other iconic moments. You know, Kyle Busch passing Chase Elliott late in that race because Ryan Newman decided to be a butt at the end of that race. But I digress. But, you know, Dover International Speedway has kind of gone downhill. They've lost one of the races for next year where they will be going to National Super Speedway. I am really excited for that National Super Speedway race, by the way. But Dover International Speedway, I think the racing generally has gone downhill. It's not been fantastic for the last couple of years. Even before the Gen 6 came in, it's just not been that great, and there's a reason why they've lost one of the races. A few years ago, I've had this a lot higher on the list. It's a lot lower, because honestly, it's one of my least favorite tracks on the schedule we go to. When we say Dover, I'm like, great. A Dover doubleheader, awesome. I was not excited for it, by the way. The races weren't terrible. Got to see a pretty good finish earlier this year, but honestly, Dover's racing is just not that good. Up next, in the number 19 spot, we have Sonoma International Speedway. Sonoma is honestly my least favorite road course currently on the NASCAR schedule, worse than the Daytona road course in my opinion. The problem with Sonoma is they changed the layout of the track, and the racing in 2019 was just really bad. Now, we did not get to have not a Daytona road course. We did not get to have a Sonoma race this year due to COVID-19, but honestly, I think they need to go back to the old layout, but even with the old layout, I think that the package does kind of affect the outcome of the races. I think the racing at the Daytona road course, not Daytona road course, Sonoma, has not been fantastic. And honestly, I just think Sonoma is the least impressive track on the NASCAR schedule. Not NASCAR schedule, the least impressive track of the road courses. I'm not a big fan of the Sonoma International Speedway. I think it's just not a fun racetrack in my opinion. I am glad we're going to have it again next year. Maybe Jimmy Johnson will run that next year as one of the races he's going to run next year, but we'll see what happens there. Up next, in the number 18 spot, we have the regular 1.5 mile track of Charlotte International Speedway. Now, I personally think Charlotte Motor Speedway is an okay track. We're kind of in the okay range of tracks right here. I think Charlotte Motor Speedway has been ruined by the package. I think last year's race in 2019, the Coke 600, was the best Coke 600 probably since 2011 and 2005. But still, overall, the track over the last 10 years, Coke 600 really isn't a memorable race. I don't think the race there has generally been a fantastic race at Charlotte International Speedway. You do have iconic moments of the track, like the 2005 finish with Jimmy Johnson and Bobby Labonte going side by side, and the race was 222 cautions. That was crazy. And then you had the crazy finish in 2011 where Kevin Harvick won a fuel mileage win after Gale Jr. ran out of gas on the last lap, and Casey Kane, who dominated a lot of that day, was really not that great as well. I just think Charlotte in general has kind of been waning off as a track. I think 2019, like I said, was good, but overall I think Charlotte Motor Speedway has gone down a lot lower on the list. It used to be a lot higher on the list. You know, a lot of people used to look to the Coke 600 as a great race for attrition base, but because attrition isn't as big a part in NASCAR nowadays, I think Charlotte Motor Speedway has kind of been ruined by that, and a lot of people just get tired of the Coke 600 and think it's just too long of a race, and it was really, really long. next, in the number 17 spot, we have Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Las Vegas is a little bit up from where I would have put it. I would have probably put it a couple places lower before this year's race in 2020. But man, that race earlier this year brought Vegas up a little bit and made it an awesome race as well. We got to see long green flag runs. We got to see Kevin Harvick fall off in that race. We got to see Chase Elliott drive up to the front. We got to see a lot of leaders, a lot of lead changes, a lot of good battling as well through that race in 2020. And honestly, the package, 550 horsepower package, has really helped out a track like Las Vegas Motor Speedway. I think it's made the racing a lot closer. I think the track has also had some really good moments in its time. You know, look back 2009 when Kyle Busch started in the back of the race and came up to the front and beat guys like Jeff Burton and Clint Bowyer for the victory. There was that kind of moments like that at Las Vegas. You know, 2006 when Matt Kenseth beat Jimmy Johnson to the line in a photo finish. Well, Jimmy Johnson beat Matt Kenseth to the line in a photo finish. I think that was an iconic moment for Las Vegas. Honestly, I think Las Vegas International Speedway has done a really good job putting on races. I am afraid that this upcoming race this weekend isn't going to be a really great race because they're using more grip on the cars. Maybe it'll make the racing better. I don't know, but honestly, I'm afraid that Vegas is not going to be a great race after we had one of the best races in Las Vegas history last time we were here. And we got a pretty good finish where Joey got to held up guys like Matt DiMenedetto and Bubba Wallace for the victory, and I think that is going to be exciting for that race. Next, in the number 16 spot, we have a track that who made its debut earlier this year, the Daytona Road Course. The Daytona Road Course was not as exciting as we thought it was going to be. We saw some pretty cool stuff with the Daytona Road Course. Of course, we saw the king of the track, Chase Elliott, show up, and it was a pretty technical race. You know, we saw a lot of green flag passes in that race, and we got to see some pretty cool stuff at Daytona Road Course. Again, I'm putting it kind of in the middle of the list around a 16th position because all the other tracks above it, I think, have produced a lot better races over time, in my opinion. But the Daytona Road Course, I think, in the future, could it be a Cup Series date next year? There is that possibility we'll get a date next year at Daytona Road Course, as we are going to have the Clash next year with the Daytona Road Course. I think Daytona Road Course has stayed, and it did a really good job, and maybe we could see it as a points-paying race next year in the 2021 season. Up next, in the number 15 spot, we have Auto Club International Speedway. Now, why am I ranking Auto Club a little bit higher than Las Vegas? Because of the races before this year's Las Vegas race. I think Auto Club has been affected by the package a little bit. You look at 2018 and 2019, and even 2017 in a sense. Those races were just not that good in general. But the race before that, look back at 2016, where you had a really awesome duel between 5 cars most of the day, a 5-car battle for the lead at points in that race. Look back at 2015, where Kurt Busch held off Brad Keselowski. Look back at 2014. No, Brad Keselowski held off Kurt Busch. 2014, where Kyle Busch passed Tony Stern and Kurt Busch in a great duel, and Kyle Larson almost won. Those are iconic moments at Auto Club International Speedway. A few years ago, I would have had Auto Club kind of higher on the list, but because the racing's kind of gone down, and they are changing Auto Club International Speedway, by the way, and they're making it a half-mile racetrack, which I am really excited for that race, by the way. I think Auto Club International Speedway, I think, is going to produce a really awesome race, and I think we're going to see an excellent race at Auto Club when we go to the half-mile track. Hopefully the race like this year will be really good as well, and we'll see some pretty good comers and goers throughout the race as well in 2021 as the final race on the 2-mile circuit. Up next, in the number 14 spot, we have Atlanta Motor Speedway. Now, Atlanta Motor Speedway over the last couple years has really not produced fantastic racing. And I think it is the length of the race. I think if the race is a little bit shorter, I think we'd see a lot better racing at Atlanta Motor Speedway. I think a lot of it is the track. I think the track is too bumpy, and I think they do need to eventually are going to have to repave it, which I think is going to ruin Atlanta a lot worse than it has. But they're going to have to go to the point where they're going to have to repave it. I think the drivers really like the track the way it is. It tests the driver's skill at the track. But in my honest opinion, I think Atlanta Motor Speedway, they're going to have to repave it in the future. But we've had a lot of iconic moments at the track. You look back at 2005 between Carl Edwards and Jimmy Johnson. You look back at 2000 where Bobby Labonte and Dale Earnhardt battled in side-by-side finish. Look back at 2001 where Jeff Gordon and Kevin Harvick battled side-by-side for the win. Look at all these iconic finishes. 2011 when Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson duel for the victory. Those are iconic moments at Atlanta Motor Speedway. But the last couple years, like I said, have generally not been good. The last really good race, in my opinion, at Atlanta Motor Speedway was probably the 2016 race. I thought that race was really really good in my opinion. But after that, the racing generally hasn't been great at Atlanta. That's why it's a little bit lower than it would have been a couple years ago. But Atlanta Motor Speedway is in number 14 on my list. Up next in the number 13 spot, we have New Hampshire International Speedway. New Hampshire International Speedway, in my opinion, has really gotten better over the last couple years. I think before probably the 2018 season, the racing there has just been atrocious. 2017, we saw a terrible race where Denny Hamlin pretty much dominating, and we didn't see a lot to happen. But 2018, things really started changing for New Hampshire Motor Speedway, and I think a lot of it is the fact that they only cut to one race. 2018, we saw that really cool duel between Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch. 2019, we saw a really cool duel between Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick. Let's see Brad Keselowski scored a win in 2020. And we saw a lot of comers and goers through the race this year. And I think the track has generally improved. You actually can pass now at New Hampshire, which is something we haven't seen before this year. But honestly, I think New Hampshire has generally improved their racing. And I really think that New Hampshire has grown on me as a racetrack. And I think that is why it is number 13 on my list. Up next in the number 12 position, we have Phoenix International Speedway. Phoenix International Speedway, before this year, 2019, was just not that good in my opinion. The racing was not great. The spring one was better than the fall one, let's just be real here. But the one that Denny Hamlin won, we did see a decent finish, but the racing in 2019 was just not that good at this track. When they brought the lower downforce package, I saw the best Phoenix race I think I've ever seen. I don't think I've seen a race where we saw a lot of comers and goers through that race, and anybody could have honestly won that thing. Let's see, like Joey Logano did win this race, but we got to see a lot of comers and goers throughout that race, and I think Phoenix has definitely drastically improved their package over time, and I think the Phoenix International Speedway will be a track, especially since it is going to be the championship race here. Of course, only 8,000 fans are going to be a lot at the track, but I think they better keep the package here. Hopefully, when we go to the next-gen car, the racing will continue to be as good as it has, because honestly, I'm really looking forward to the final race of the year this year at Phoenix. I wasn't looking forward to it last year being the championship race. When NASCAR went back to the lower downforce package and a higher horsepower, I think that really fixed Phoenix National Speedway, and I'm really excited for the championship race as well. Up next, in the number 11 spot, we have Richmond International Speedway. Richmond International Speedway, in my opinion, is my least favorite short track on the schedule, and it's still the number 11 spot. Richmond International Speedway, I like the comer and goer aspect of the racetrack. Yes, it's definitely not as good as it used to be. It used to be really good back in the day, like in 2005, 2006, 2007. It used to be really good back in those races, but the races are still really excellent. In the long runs, you still have a lot of action happening on the track, and while the action isn't as much as, like a racetrack like Bristol or Martinsville, you still get a lot of action in races, see a lot of comers, goers. There are a lot of green flag runs at the track, and a lot of fans don't like a lot of long green flag runs, especially these days, but in my opinion, Richmond International Speedway is good about that. You can see drivers drive up to the field. Tires do matter. That's a big thing. And like I said, you get that comers and goer aspect of Richmond International Speedway. That is what makes it really, really exciting. And now we are getting into the top 10 best racetracks on the NASCAR schedule. All 10 of these tracks, I am a huge, huge fan of. These are my favorite tracks, and I'm really excited to tell you those right here. Now in the number 10 spot, we have Darlington International Speedway. I love Darlington International Speedway. I love going there every single year. I think Darlington this year was not as good as previous Southern 500 races, but I always enjoy the Southern 500. You get that throwback feel, and it always is one of my favorite aspects. And hopefully we may get a second race here next year. And we saw some really good racing earlier this year at Darlington in the shorter races. The throwback feel to me, though, is what makes Darlington such a special racetrack for all the fans who do go to that race. You get the throwback feel. You get the drivers sometimes getting involved in it. You can see the throwback schemes, which are really, really excellent. And Darlington does produce some awesome racing. We see iconic moments at the track, 2003, where Ricky Craven and Kurt Busch battled for the win. We got to see a good battle in 2004, the spring race between Jimmy Johnson and Bobby Labonte. There's are a lot of iconic moments at this racetrack. 2011, Regan Smith and Carl Eggers. And I think Darlington International Speedway still holds its ground and is one of my favorite racetracks, one of my favorite mile and a half on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. And Darlington is a fantastic track. Up next in the number 9 spot, we have Homestead Miami Speedway. Homestead Miami Speedway is awesome track. It is an excellent, excellent racetrack. We get to see multi-group racing. Even with this year's package, the racing still down there was excellent. We got to see a really awesome duel between Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, and Ryan Blaney. Even Tyler Reddick was up there extending for the point. But it's really awesome because it used to be the championship race. And it's a little bit lower than I would have had it because, again, it's not the championship race this year. But, man, Homestead produced some really awesome racing, multi-groove, comers and goers throughout the field. You can see the excellent feel of Homestead Miami Speedway. And I love the track in general. And as one track I really would like to go to some point as a racing fan. Because, honestly, the feel of Homestead Miami Speedway, it's an excellent racetrack. It's in the city. It's right outside the city of Miami. Well, it's not right outside the city of Miami. It's like 10 miles from the city of Miami. You get the point. But Homestead Miami Speedway is a really excellent racetrack, and I love the racetrack in general. Up next, in the number 8 spot, we have the third road course actually, on the schedule. I'm talking about Watkins Glen International Speedway. Now, unfortunately, this year, Watkins Glen did not have a Cup Series date due to COVID-19, which Daytona road course got this year. I have always been a fan of Watkins Glen. I think the racing at Watkins Glen is awesome. You can see a lot of passing. Unfortunately, last year's track really weren't that great because of the package, but you get to see a lot of awesome moments at this track and also see a lot of crashes and big bangs. 2016, the big one. 2009, when Jeff Gordon, Sam Morris, Jeff Burton crashed. We've seen a lot of crazy things happen at Watkins Glen International Speedway. We've also seen some really iconic finishes at the track as well. Look at 2012 between Brad Keselowski and Marcus Ambrose. 2014 between Marcus Ambrose and AJ Allmendinger. Those were iconic finishes at the track. And like I said, 2019 wasn't a great race, but Chase Elliott holding off Martin Truex Jr. 2018, that was excellent. I think Watkins Glen is one of my favorite road courses. It is one of the best on the circuit. Up next, in the number 7 position, we have Chicagoland International Speedway. Now, it's very uncertain if Chicagoland is going to be on the Cup Series schedule past the 2020 season, actually past 2019, since there wasn't a race this year because of COVID-19. But Chicago International Speedway, I think, has generally grown on me a lot as a racetrack. Before the 2017 race, the racing down there wasn't excellent. We got to see some good stuff happen in Chicagoland, but when they moved us to a playoff race, the racing down there, except 2014, was really not that, watching 2011. The racing over there was not really excellent. But when they moved this race back to the summer date, it felt natural. It felt amazing. And Chicago, for a lot of people, went way up on their rankings because Chicago International Speedway is a great racetrack. They need to upgrade the facility, though. That is one thing they really are going to have to work on. But Chicago International Speedway is an excellent racetrack on the NASCAR schedule. And I hope that we get to see it next year, but I'm really worried that we're not going to see a race in Chicagoland. Which is a great chance because Chicagoland is a really excellent racetrack. Up next, in the number 6 position, we have Kansas International Speedway. The highest ranking mile and a half on this year, by the way. Honestly, Kansas International Speedway. What's wrong with Kansas? The track is in perfect condition right now. The racing is excellent at this track. The last couple years especially have been incredible. 2019 was really the first time we got to see the 550 horsepower package work at night. We got to see a really awesome duel between Brad Keselowski, guys like Alex Bowman, Eric Jones for the victory. And that was really awesome at Kansas International Speedway. And a race earlier this year, we got to see a lot of comers and goers. The high sign came in, which we really haven't seen with the 550 horsepower package, by the way, since we had it in 2019. But Kansas races are generally awesome. I'm looking forward to the playoff race in Kansas. I think you're going to see some awesome racing in Kansas. And man, I am a huge fan of Kansas International Speedway. And now we have reached the top 5. These are the best of the best. Let's get into it. So to start off with the number 5 position, we have the Charlotte Roval. The first years of the Charlotte Roval. What can you say about Charlotte Roval? It is crazy. There is so much chaos in this race. 2018, we saw a really awesome duel between Martin Truex Jr. and Jimmy Johnson where they both took each other out. And Ryan Blaney sold a victory. And then he had them wrecking the heartburn turn going into turn run because everyone basically turned their controllers off and drove straight into the wall going into turn number 1 because basically decided we're just going to stop and just not go into the turn like we're supposed to. But the Charlotte Roval always produced great racing. Drivers still haven't figured out as he got to the second year. Chase Elliott, who actually ended up winning the race, drove straight into the inside wall. Didn't learn from 2018. I am really excited for the Charlotte Roval, by the way, this year. I think that race is going to be really, really fun for the fans to watch. And man, I'm a huge fan of Charlotte Roval, and I hope that we can see this track long-term for many years to come, as it is being rumored that IMSA, and as a matter of fact, IMSA, I think is supposed to have a race in 2020, maybe 2021, I don't remember. I think it's supposed to have a race this year. But man, the Charlotte Roval is an excellent racetrack, and it's an awesome track for the fans to go to. Up next, in the number 4 spot, we have Martinsville International Speedway, one of the tracks where you can see a lot of beating and banging. out on the racetrack. I am a big, big fan of Martinsville. It's also known for the Martinsville hot dogs, by the way, and it's the paperclip track. Martinsville International Speedway. But I know the last couple years of the track have not been great. 2020 actually was honestly an excellent race. But Martinsville is still one of the best tracks on the NASCAR schedule. You can see beating and banging, tempers flaring at the track, people throwing helmets, all that jazz at Martinsville International Speedway. I think Martinsville Speedway is one of the most iconic tracks. It is the only track that has been on the schedule since the beginning days of NASCAR, and a track that will probably never get off the Cup Series schedule because Martinsville is one of the most iconic tracks on the NASCAR schedule, one of the best in NASCAR. Up next in the number 3 spot, we have Talladega International Speedway. Talladega Super Speedway is a freaking awesome track right now. I know that before 2019, the racing wasn't great because it was a lot of single file racing, and we saw a terrible race in 2018 where Stuart Haas Racing said, we're going to have 4 cars basically break away from the field and no one's going to catch us because we're all going to have a second faster than the field basically. But man, at Talladega, they have made this package so excellent, and you go to Talladega, you love it. Everybody wants to go to Talladega. I want to go to Talladega. You probably want to go to Talladega. You know, Talladega Super Speedway is an excellent racetrack, and I plan on going here very, very soon. Hopefully, maybe in the next couple of years, I would like to go to Talladega race in the future. But Talladega, you get the feel. You also have the Talladega infield where you see all the chaos and craziness. It's really awesome. The night before that race, it's crazy. The weekend buildup is amazing. Up next in the number 2 position, we have Daytona Super Speedway. Daytona International Speedway. What is wrong with Daytona? Nothing. Daytona, the package, like I said, is excellent. What makes Daytona so iconic, of course, is the Daytona 500 and all those iconic races that have happened. 1979, 1998, where Dale Earnhardt won. 2007, a battle between Kevin Harvick and Mark Martin. Daytona is one of the most iconic racetracks on the NASCAR schedule and is one of my favorite races to go to every year. And I think NASCAR also made a really good job by moving it as the cutoff race for the playoffs. I think the racing at Daytona has gotten excellent over the last couple of years, and I cannot wait for the future of Daytona as we continue to see great racing at Daytona International Speedway. Now we get to the number 1 racetrack on the NASCAR schedule. I think you all know what it is. My favorite current racetrack on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule is Bristol International Speedway. You heard that right. Bristol has been my favorite racetrack to go to every year. I always enjoy going to Bristol. The racing there has been fan-frickin-tastic. It's always great there at Bristol Motor Speedway. We see a lot of beat and bang, a lot of tempers flaring at the racetrack, and it's really exciting when we head out to Bristol International Speedway. We can see a lot of cool things happen at that track. The half-mile track, especially in that race in Bristol where we always see tempers flaring at the track. And Bristol Motor Speedway is the most iconic track. Well, not the most iconic, but Bristol Motor Speedway is my favorite track on the schedule. It's fun for the fans. You can feel the energy when you go there. Even from my house, you can feel the energy at that track. And you don't really get to feel that energy at any other race. You got to feel the energy earlier about a week ago, actually. You got to feel that huge, huge energy that was around the racetrack. And it was excellent, I think, for a lot of us to watch, including myself. The energy of the track made it excellent. I think it is the best racetrack on the Cup Series schedule, and the racing there continues to be excellent. So, that is me ranking every single NASCAR track on this video. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video. Please like and subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on so you'll be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Links description below for that. And comment below your thoughts on today's video. Do you agree with me on my list, or do you think my list is completely incorrect and you have a list of your own? Let me know in comments below. Or do you agree with me? Just let me know in comments below as well. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I will see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.